Hello guys and welcome back. Okay, so for the last part of this tutorial, what we're going to be doing is kind of giving the last bits of life to this tree. So as you can see now, we have the leaves kind of moving. I've set up the shader to kind of feel a little more natural. And you can tinker with this for quite a while to get it just right. But I'm going to call this done for now. And what we're going to do now is add the last bits of life to this tree. Right now, the tree is not really, like, yes, the leaves are moving, but the branches themselves are not really swaying, okay? So in part 2 of our tutorial series, we had gone in and created some blend shapes. And if we select the blend shape here, we can actually look at the asset preview, and we can see that we can make it sway some, right? So we can make it sway to the right, we can make it sway to the forward, we can make it sway backwards, and we can make it sway left, okay? So we've got these nice blend shapes, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and use them, okay? So let's just leave this as is, we're just gonna keep it saved, and let's go into the Elm Tree unit, and let's start working with it, okay? So let's just double click on the Elm Tree unit, and let's go right into the unit flow, and let's get this thing doing what it's supposed to do. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to start with a simple trigonometric function that's going to give us a gentle movement, okay? And it's going to go from 0 to 1, and it's just going to oscillate from 0 to 1, okay? So to do that, we're going to use the sine function. So we're going to go math, trigonometry, sine, okay? And that's going to give us a very simple movement pattern if we supply it with an incoming, constantly increasing numeric, okay? So the sine function is going to give us an output of -1 to +1. Now, because it gives us -1 to +1, we don't really want that. Our blend shapes are going to want from 0 to 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little math to make sure that this output doesn't give us from -1 to 1, but instead it's going to give us 0 to 1, okay? So how we're going to do that is simple. We're just going to first of all go math, numeric, addition, okay? And this is going to allow us to add 1 to the output. So if we had -1 plus 1 is going to be 0. If it's 1 plus 1, it's going to be 2. So right now with this setup, right, if we put this as 1, we're going to now have an output of 0 to 2, okay? So we don't really want that either. We really want, 0 to 1. So what we're going to do now is just divide the output by 2 rather. So math, numeric, multiply, and we're just going to multiply it by 0.5, okay? Which is like dividing by half, right? Or dividing by 2. So now we've got our output from here is going to be 0 to 1. Okay, so now that we have our sine function created, let's go ahead and finish up this function. Okay, so like I said, we're going to need a constant number that ever increases on this sine function. And the easiest way to do that is with a counter. So what we're going to do is we're going to go flow control, counter, okay? And a counter will give us an incremented value constantly upwards, okay? So we're just going to go value up, and we're going to connect this to level update. So we're going to go event level update, okay? And when we go to the increase, all we're going to do is every frame, we're going to increase this value by 1 constantly, okay? So that's really all we have to do. And that's going to give us our constantly increasing numeric, okay? And then it's going to go through the sine function, it's going to add by 1, and it's going to give a multiplication of 0.5, and our output is going to go from 0 to 1, and then back down to 0 to 1 to 0 to 1 to 0, and it's going to do it in a very smooth, just like a sine wave. It's going to be a wave-like function, okay? So this is giving us a wave-like output from 0 to 1, okay? So now that we have that, all we have to do is connect it to our blend shapes. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go blend shapes, set blend shape channel weight, and we're just going to plug this into our weight, okay? The unit is going to be my unit because it's the tree that holds it. And the channel name is what we're going to have to get from the blend shape, okay? So let's just move this out of the way a little bit. Let's select our blend shape, and we're going to do tree Russell. Let's start with tree Russell 1, okay? So tree Russell 1 is what we want to plug into there, okay? So back to here, we're just going to go tree Russell 1. Okay, and just make sure it is case sensitive, so it's got to be absolutely correct. Okay, and then what we're going to do is from this changed, we're just going to plug this changed into the in. Okay, and that will give us that function as we need it. Okay, so that's literally all we really have to do. Now, if we go File, Save, we can just go ahead and play our level and see what happens. Okay, so let's go play. And we should see that our tree is now going to sway in the breeze. And as you can see, it's exactly doing so. So it's swaying to the right. And we can see that our whole tree is now swaying in the breeze. It's probably a little bit too much, but we'll limit that in a moment, okay? So there we have it. So we have our basic movement of our first input, okay? So what can we do to make this a little better? Let's go back into our unit editor. And let's jump back to our unit flow and let's take a look. Okay, so now that we're back in our unit flow, what we're going to want to do is have some way to be able to limit the amount that we're going to be pushing this thing. So all we're going to do is a little bit more math. Okay, so we're just going to go add, math, multiply, numeric multiply. And this is going to be our limiter, okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to just plug this into here, and we want this number to be a range of 0 to 1, okay? So 0 would mean that it's not going to move at all. 1 is going to mean that it's going to have the full range of movement, and anything in between is going to be a limiter on how much we're going to be kind of controlling how much it's going to sway. Okay, so let's go ahead and connect this with a variable. So we're just going to do a get numeric variable. And we're just going to plug this into this multiplication, okay? And we're going to call this limiter. Okay, so actually let's use lowercase. And there we have it. So now our limiter is going to be our multiplier against our sine wave. And that's going to go ahead and give us the ability to limit how much it sways with each passing movement. Okay, now one other thing we might want to do is adjust how fast this thing moves, right? So right now it's kind of swaying pretty quickly. We might want that to be a lot more gentle, okay? And we're going to go ahead and include a speed variable. So let's go ahead and go variable, get numeric variable, and we're going to plug this into this increment, okay? So right now, or before, it was incrementing by 1 every time. If we slow that number down, the slower the sine wave function operates, which in turn makes our blend shape move slower. So very easily we can control this just by making this increment slower. Okay, so let's go ahead and give this variable a name, and we're going to call it speed. Okay, so there we have our speed. And now all we have to do is set these numbers, okay? Because right now it's just piping in nothing because we haven't set these variables to be anything yet, okay? So let's go ahead and initialize our variables. So what we're going to do is we're going to go event on level loaded, or on unit spawned rather. We're going to go ahead and go variable, set numeric variable. We're going to copy that variable and paste it. And we just want these to be the same as these names. So I'm just going to copy speed from here, and I'm going to put that into speed there. And we're going to copy this limiter, copy, and we're going to paste it into the name here. Okay, so now we're going to, whatever value set in here is going to be piped in over here. Okay, so that's all we're really doing. And we're going to go ahead and connect them all. And that is pretty much what we're going to want. So let's just give them some simple numbers. Let's give it 1 for now so that the speed is the same as it was. But let's limit the amount that it's going to move. Let's put in something like 0.2, okay? Which will dramatically reduce how much it's going to actually move now. Okay, so let's go save. And let's try it out. And let's just see what we've got. Okay, so as you can see, our tree is now swaying very, very little. Okay, we're getting almost no sway out of the tree now. See if I can get a better view of it. It's still swaying, but it's just swaying very little. Okay, we're not getting a whole lot of sway out of it anymore. Okay, so as you can see, the limiter is working as it's supposed to. Okay, so very easy way to control its movement and how much it's going to affect the tree. Okay, now we're probably going to want that a little more obvious. So let's put this back to 1 now, so we have the full range of movement again. And let's set this number to something like 0.2 now, okay? And let's see what that does, okay? So let's go save. So now we're gonna set the speed to 0.2. Let's go ahead and get a better view so I don't have to go all over the place trying to find the position. And let's hit play. Now you're gonna see that we're gonna get the same movement that we had originally, which is pretty dramatic sway. Oops, wrong direction. But it's happening extremely slowly now. So as you can see, we have a pretty controllable system now for dealing with how much we want it to sway and how fast we want it to sway, okay? So very controllable and very useful, okay? Especially if we're dealing with trees, okay? So the one thing that we would find is that if we were to go ahead and duplicate this tree, we're gonna have a small problem, okay? And I'm gonna show you the next thing we're gonna do to resolve that problem. So let's go ahead and get 3 of our trees. And let's go into the tree unit again. And let's just set this back to 1 so we have a nice fast movement again. And let's go save and hit play. And what you're gonna find is that all of our trees are gonna be moving identically, right? We're getting no randomness to their movement, right? They're just absolutely identical. So if we were to go ahead and reproduce this tree throughout our scene, it's going to look really uncanny. It's going to be like weird, right? You're going to have this like, why are all the trees moving identically, right? You don't really want that, okay? So instead what we're going to do is we're going to introduce a little bit of randomization into our function. And we're going to do that just by setting these values right here with a random number, okay? So on our speed, what we're going to do is we're going to random numeric, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to go with the speed of something like 0.5 to 1.5, okay? So let's go max of, or min of 0.5 and a max of 1.5, okay? And we can plug that into here. Now for our total amount of sway, or the limiter, what we're going to do is something a little less dramatic. We're going to go something like 0.5 to 0.75, okay? And that's going to give us like a little bit more, you know, difference. Like we don't want it to sway quite as much as 1 ever, right? 1 was just way too much. So we're just going to limit it down, but we're just going to keep it between 0.5 and 0.75. All right. So now if we go save, we can minimize this and we can hit play. And you'll see now that they all will have a slightly different movement speed and a slightly different sway quality. And as you can see, within like 1 cycle, they're already out of sync. Okay, now obviously you're going to want to play with those numbers a bit more than that, but with those 2 numbers, you can really get some pretty nice results, and it doesn't really take that long. Okay, so what we're doing right now is we're just dealing with 1 tree in general, right? Or I'm sorry, 1 movement. We're only using 1 of the blend shapes. So what we're going to want to do now is include all of those blend shapes. So let's go ahead and do that, right? To do that easily, what we're really just going to do is just group this. So group, and we'll call this Russell 1. And we're just going to copy this and paste it down the line. Oops. Okay, so now we've got our 4 different Russells, and we just need to change these from Russell 1 to Russell 2 to Russell 3 and to Russell 4. And save it. And that's already going to do the job. One thing that I would recommend though is to actually give these all different variables as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're basically going to give each of the speeds a different number. Okay, so this one's speed 1, let's say. This is going to be speed 2, speed 3, speed 4, and we're just going to copy those across. Okay, so let's just do that now. Let's disconnect this for the moment and move it out of the way. And let's copy these. Control C, Control V. Control C. CV, and V. Okay, and we're just going to connect these up. And we're going to make this speed 1, speed 2, speed 3, and speed 4. Okay, so now we've got our different speeds, and what we're going to want to do now is the different limiters, okay? So let's just move these a bit out of the way. Let's actually just move this whole thing out of the way. Sorry, it's just getting a little sloppy. I don't like sloppy. So let's move this here. And so we don't have to have just a long continuing chain. Let's go flow control, sequence. So let's go ahead and put this sequence into place. Connect the sequence to the in. Let's go 1 up to the top and 2 into this bottom one. And that's going to just basically do the same thing as if we just continued out to the right, but I just don't like getting it that long. And now it's nice and clean. Okay, we can even group this to make it even cleaner. So let's group it. Group, and we'll call this speed initialize. Yeah, speed initializer sounds good to me. And let's do the same thing here for our copy and paste and paste and paste. Let's just move these around a little bit, make them nice and neat. It's always important to be neat, otherwise you can't read your own code. And we're just going to connect the sets. Okay, and we just want to do these the same. So the limiter stays the same, limiter 1, limiter 2, and, oops, I'm sorry, limiter 2. So limiter 2, limiter 3, and limiter 4. Okay, so there we have it. Let's group these as well. And we'll call this limit initialize. And we should be in pretty good shape here. Move this up a touch, move that over a touch. Let's get all these guys nicely in line like good soldiers. Okay, and that's looking pretty sharp. Now all we have to do is just make these all the same. So this is going to be speed 2, limiter 2, speed 3, limiter 3, and speed 4, speed 4, and limiter 4. And lastly, we're just going to make our groups correct. So Russell 2, Russell 3, and Russell 4. So now what we're doing is we're introducing a different random set for each one of these Russells. So, you know, it might sway a little more to the right than it does forward and back, and it might sway a little less left to right than it does, you know, in another direction. So this gives us a much more wide range of control that we can kind of use. And now, mind you, that these are all going to be blending together. They're not going to be one or the other ever. It's going to be kind of like this mishmash of all these different blends going together, which is kind of good because we want that kind of random quality going on with our tree. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what this ends up looking like. All right, so let's minimize that, hit play, and we should find that this is going to be pretty good. And it's definitely getting there. It's a bit too much. So what I'm going to want to do is just reduce the amount of limitation, right? The limiter needs to be just dramatically reduced. It's just way too much. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. Let's go back to our unit flow. And let's just go into this limiter function and reduce these numbers some. So let's go 0.25 to 0.5. And let's do that for all of these. And again, we could even do that with the speed as well if we wanted to slow it down some more. But, you know, I'm not going to go too crazy on getting it set up nicely. I'm going to kind of let you guys handle that to get the movement speed you're looking for. But yeah, there we have it. And that feels pretty good, actually. Maybe a little slower would be nice. Might be a little too fast. But that's basically it. So now you know how to control pretty much anything you'd want to control on a tree. I'm going to go ahead and conclude this tutorial, and hopefully you guys learned a bunch. And that's it. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial series. Bye-bye now.